Willie D Live.
Hey, man, the last time that I was on your show was like 2020, I think, right?
About that time, yeah.
That was 2020.
Yes.
And that's because something very interesting happened
Yes.
Around that time.
Yeah.
So we're going to get right into that.
Yeah.
You've built your platform off of Black culture and voices. And yet when it came to Farrakhan, you misquoted him and refused to apologize, and which led to a lot of people in the hip-hop community coming at you and disassociating themselves with you, most notably Godfrey and Lord Jamar, who were regulars on the show.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't disassociate myself with you. I remained friends with you.
Correct.
But I did boycott doing your show.
Yes.
I boycotted the show.
Right.
And I did that because, Farrakhan is one of those people that I hold in high regard to such a degree that, I'm actually glad he was born. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't think people walk around with that type of thing. Like, man, I'm glad this guy was born. I'm glad we have this guy. No, Farrakhan has done like a lot of good in our community, and he saved a whole lot of Black people. So when you refused to apologize to Farrakhan, I took offense to that. And I told you that,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
On more than one occasion.
Yeah, no, we had multiple conversations on the phone about it.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And, you made a statement that read, at the time, you said, on Friday, Vlad TV posted an interview with D.L. Hughley where I referenced part of Farrakhan's speech about Jews. After our interview was released, I was made aware that there was a later part in Farrakhan's speech where he clarified those points. Based on that info, we removed that part of our interview, changed the title, and removed the social media post. Although I don't agree with some of Farrakhan's statements, Vlad TV has always reported on people accurately and will continue to do so.
Mm-hmm.
So where you stand today?
I've changed my stance about this.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why did you do that?
Well, at the time, I had some people around me who I thought had my best intentions, who I realized later on didn't and had their own agendas. And sometimes when you get into situations like this, you choose the people around you as opposed to the public, because the people around you are the people that you have to deal with every day and are closer to you. The public you could deal with. We all deal with public backlash and so forth. So at the time, I decided to go that direction, even though it didn't really sit right on me. But over time, I got to see some of those people's true colors. And I started to really think of the moment that I was actually going to come forward and talk about it. And you being my actual friend and us talking about it for years and years, I felt that if I was going to do it, I was going to do it on this platform. Because I've done dozens of interviews since then, right? And I've always said before my interviews, no Farrakhan questions. And everyone's always respected that, just like I respect people when they come to my platform to say the same thing. But I feel like at this time, especially with what's happening between Israel, Jews and Muslims around the world, I don't feel that this stance of both parties just kind of buckling down and saying that we're not going to see the other person's side and so forth hasn't done anybody any good. So I feel as a prominent person in hip hop who is Jewish, one of the, probably one of the small handful of people in hip hop who are Jewish and are openly Jewish about it. I felt that it was my duty to try to fix things, because ultimately, when you look at the relationship between the Nation of Islam and the Jewish community, it's never been good. And what does that accomplish for both parties? Nothing. Am I right?
Right.
So I felt that it was time to address it. And I told you for, a little while now that when I address it, I'm going to address it with you. And that's what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, you kept your word.
Yeah.
You kept your word.
Yeah.
how bad did it get out there? Because I can only, we didn't talk about every single instance that came up that was a remnant of that action. So how bad did it get?
I think it personally got bad because some of the people that I was thinking, like in the same way that you and I had conversations, those conversations remain private, right?
Right.
I respect you, you respect me. And when we have these types of conversations and I open up to you and I say certain things about what's happening, I know that the next day you're not going to run to the internet and say, something Vlad told me in a personal phone call that he really feels this way and so forth. So I was talking to a number of people who I thought we had relationships. I thought they were my friends. I thought that we were, there's a level of trust and so forth, only to have those people turn around and start making videos the next day about these conversations, and these conversations weren't represented properly a lot of times. Things were twisted up. Things were changed and so forth to make me look bad and make the person look good. And that hurt. That hurt because some of these people had been in my home. I've extended myself to those people. I fed them. I helped promote them and so forth. And I thought there was a mutual respect. So I think that was the most hurtful part. The public is the public. We all deal with our, over time I've dealt with this lots of times. The public being mad at me. And eventually they get over it and you go back to business. But some of those relationships that I no longer have, that I had at the time, and the way that those relationships fell apart, that's what really hurt the most.
Yeah.
And that's why I respected our relationship, because you said, listen, I don't agree with your stance, and I'm not going to do your show for a while, but I would never go out and bash you publicly, which over the last 5 years you never did. Even when you had people on the show that didn't agree with what I said, you didn't go overboard with letting them just kind of trash me on your show. So that to me was the most difficult part.
Yeah. I think, for me, that's the way that I rock, right? But here's the thing that, because I have a lot of reverence for Godfrey and for Lord Jamar. And so the way I operate is this. Like, when you hurt somebody, you don't get to dictate how they respond. Mm-hmm. So, and I don't know if you I know that you apologized, but I don't know if you really understand the depth of how people feel about Farrakhan. Like, he's not a regular dude. Mm-hmm. Like, I know he's a human being like us, and he bleed and breathe just like everybody else. Mm-hmm. He gets colds, and his stomach hurts sometimes, and get food poisoning. I got all of that. But Farrakhan is so revered because he take the hits. Heavy is the head that wear the crown. Mm-hmm. And he has worn the crown for a long time. And his head has been heavy for a long time for wearing that crown. And, he's been misrepresented, misunderstood for a long, long, long time. What I want to know is, when Farrakhan does talk about Jews, oftentimes when he do talk about Jews, he speaks specifically. He don't put everybody in one bunch and say, this is all you guys. He talk about specific guys who did this, or did that, or did that. Mm-hmm. What I want to know is, like, why is it that it seems to me like most of the Jewish community have an issue with Farrakhan speaking the truth? Because he don't lie. When he speaks things, when he talk about things, he speak on the truth. He just talk, this happened, this happened, this happened, this who did it, and he do the same thing with black people. I've been on stage with Farrakhan, and he called people out sitting on the stage, including me. Mm-hmm. Like, he just tell the truth. He just speak on, what's righteous. Mm-hmm. So I don't have a problem with if I do something and somebody call it out or whatever. I really don't have a problem with that, because if I didn't want to have a problem with that, I wouldn't have done it. Yeah.
Well, I think there's a certain knee-jerk reaction when someone who's not of your immediate group talks about your group, right?
Okay, I hear that.
A black
it.
person can talk about other
Yeah.
black people, but when a white person talks about black people, it's a problem.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, for example, when you look at like the Breakfast Club, and it was the owner of the Eagles, I believe, was on the show and was saying, he doesn't like how black people attack other black people like Meek Mill, and they call him gay
Right.
and stuff like that. And there was a big backlash over that.
Yeah, I remember that guy.
Right.
Was he the owner of the?
Was it the Eagles?
Was
or?
it the Eagles? It was that guy that do the parties, right?
Yeah, right. That guy.
Him.
Yeah,
I didn't know he
forgot.
owned-
I forgot.
I didn't know he
Maybe he's
owned-
not the owner of the Eagles. He
Yeah.
owns some sports team.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm misrepresenting it because I'm just trying to address what you're saying. But he made comments about the black community,
Yeah.
and there was a huge backlash over it.
Right.
And he said that someone who I respect more than anyone else reached out to me and showed me the error of my ways and let me apologize. He was probably talking about Jay-Z,
Okay.
which is what most people thought. But that's the thing. When people have a certain level of leeway of talking about their own group. I could talk about how I don't like how the Israeli government is handling the conflict with Hamas. I could say how it's too heavy-handed. I could say that I'm not a fan of Netanyahu and so forth. But I'm Jewish, and I could say that. A Muslim person or a black person saying that might get accused of being anti-Semitic. But it's the same statement
Right.
from both people. But based on the person saying it, it's going to be taken a different type of way. So I think that's what happens. When you have someone like a Farrakhan talking about the black community, everyone's cool with it. But he starts talking about other communities, then people have more of an issue with it.
Okay, I get that because when I was making music, I was oftentimes accused of being racist, right?
Really?
And we can get into the real definition of what racism is, but I understand what they was trying to say. My point is that I would call out the government. I'd call out police officers who kill black folks who just almost always happen to be white. The people in power who make these decisions that adversely affect the black community, they just happen to be white. When I call them out, I call them out specifically. Mm-hmm. I never said all of you, all white people, all of this, nothing. I'm always specific. So when I call them out, oh, he's a racist. Oh, he don't like white people. He's this, whatever. But when a white guy does it, he's a rebel. If I do it, I'm anti-Semitic.
Anti-white.
I'm not a patriot. Yeah, I'm anti-white. I'm not patriotic. But when a white guy does it, he's a rebel. He's a patriot.
Right.
He's a patriot.
Right.
And he's celebrated. But I get it. I get
It's a
that
double
part.
standard. I'm not saying it's fair.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that's how most humans take it. It just is what it is. So I think that answers your question in terms of why it's presented that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to have a conversation with Farrakhan?
I was always willing to have a conversation with Farrakhan. And that's, if I want to address some of the misconceptions, when I first, misquoted him, I had a relationship with the Nation of Islam. There was a guy I dealt with. I don't remember his name, but he was one of the people around Farrakhan. I had talked to him on a number of occasions. I'd actually used him to book security. So I had an NOI security guy that I used every so often, for certain situations where I felt it was appropriate. I'd interviewed multiple people from the Nation of Islam. Nuri Muhammad was one. Another, I forgot the name off the top of my head.
I saw that interview.
I saw a couple interviews.
Really good interview, too.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I also interviewed, Malcolm X's daughter and so forth. So I had what I felt was a relatively cool relationship with the Nation. Sorry, what was the question again? I lost my train of thought a little bit.
I asked you, would you be willing to sit down with
Right.
Farrakhan?
Sorry. Thank you. So when this whole thing happened, the first phone call I got was from the guy I dealt with in the NOI. And the first thing he said was, hey, let's address this misquote. do an interview with Nuri Muhammad about it. And I said, well, that doesn't make any sense because I wasn't talking about Nuri. I was talking about Farrakhan. So I'm not going to have a conversation with someone who I wasn't talking about the person I was talking about. But if he's open to it, I'm willing to have a conversation with Farrakhan about it on or off camera. And he said, oh, well, you're just trying to get content. I said, well, no, I'll do it with your cameras. I'll go to his location. You guys could film it. You guys could edit it. You guys could put it out. I think this would be good for the Jewish community and the Muslim community right now. But he said, well, no, that's not going to happen. And I said, okay, that's fine. I respect it. And then that got twisted into Vlad will only apologize if he gets an interview with Farrakhan, which honestly was never said. It was never said like that.
What if you had said something about Obama and Obama refused to sit down with you, but Biden was? Biden said, you know, I'll sit down. I'll sit down. Would you had sat down with Biden, or would you have stood on?
Would I sit down with the
principle?
vice president? Yes, I would. But would I sit down with some cabinet person in Obama's administration? No.
See, so
But from what I understand, Nuri was not the vice president of the Nation of Islam at the time. I don't know where he is now.
yeah, he may not have been the vice president, but he's a major player.
Okay.
You know, so this.
I wasn't aware of his role in it, but for me, it was like, I don't want to have this turn into, you know, something that it's not. You see what I'm saying? I talked about this person, me and this person, I'm willing to have a conversation with him, but if he doesn't want to have it, that's totally fine. I'm extending, you know, the offer. And, you know, I've never actually spoken to him directly or anything else like that. I've heard different things from different parties around him. But at the end of the day, I just felt that it wasn't something that made sense to me at the time.
Right. I can see where you're coming from because, I mean, if you directed something toward a particular person, you would love to have that sit down and talk to that person. But if you can't, then, you know, hey, you go with the next best thing that you can get close to, and especially if you're talking about somebody with rank. What I think that people need to understand about those of us who love Farrakhan is that Farrakhan is more important than the president to us.
Okay. I respect that.
He's more important than the president to us. So that's why we have that type of reverence for him. And that's why Royce the 5'9" said what he said about you, because he loves Farrakhan for real. Mm-hmm. Like we look at him like we're not worshiping him. What we're doing is respecting him. Mm-hmm. We respect the work that he put in and the sacrifices that he made. So when people say things that's offensive towards him or they try to attack Farrakhan, then you know we take offense to that.
Right. And listen, you can't really take away the accomplishments that Farrakhan has made. The Million Man March, Justice or Else, and people like yourself who admire him and look up to him. Like, that's not easy to accomplish.
The people he's reformed.
Yeah.
We're talking about tens of thousands.
Yeah.
Not.
Yeah. I wasn't doing.
Like, how many people do you know has done that?
No,
you can look at. Okay, name any pastor. You can't name one preacher out there who can take credit for actually reforming people who have been at the bottom of the barrel and raised up out of the ashes and became responsible, productive, loving, caring, generous human beings. Yeah. You cannot name one person that's alive.
I agree, man. And at the end of the day, you can't take a person's whole story and say, well, I don't like this one phrase he used on this one day and throw away all the other accomplishments. That's just not fair.
Right.
And at the end of the day, also, it's just words, right? Like, I've never heard of Farrakhan saying something that triggered violence or triggered economic catastrophes or anything else like that. He said what he said. Some people, you know, accept it. Some people don't. But ultimately, I've never heard of the Jewish community being hurt by Farrakhan's words. So to sit there and say, I despise this person and everything he does is out the window, when you look at what he's actually done for his own community, you can't deny it. And that was the reason why I was interviewing NOI people. This is the reason why I had a relationship with certain people at NOI. I hired them for security and so forth. It was a respectful relationship until this happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, man, having the capacity to